I'm Suzanne Siracuse, and welcome to season 2 of my podcast, focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business. And I'm excited to be partnering with wealthmanagement.com on this. This series will focus on what firms need to embrace to ensure their growth and success for the future. And you'll hear from industry leaders and advisors on what's working for them. I have a great lineup of guests in store, and today I'm talking with Shannon Eusey. Shannon is the CEO of Beacon Pointe Advisors, an RIA she founded in 2002. Beacon Pointe is one of the largest RIA firms specializing in full-service financial planning and research-driven investments. Today, the firm has more than 30 billion in assets under advisement, with more than 55 offices and 500 employees nationwide. Those are really impressive numbers. Wow. Congratulations, Shannon.
And when you say it out loud, I'm like, wow, that's crazy for the last 20 something
well,
years.
I'm glad that you still think it's a big deal, because
I do.
That's so impressive. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk with you today. And just thanks for being here.
Suzanne, really, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And I think what you're doing is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the way that I always like to open these podcasts is to find out a little bit about how my guests got into this industry in the first place, right? It's not like a common thing that people study in college. So tell us about your journey into the wealth management industry. How did you decide that this was the place for you?
Sure. I'm going to take you back like way far. So I when I was a little kid, played on sports teams, ended up playing sports in college, but I was always, often as a young child, the only girl on an all boys team. And maybe not, at the time I was like, no big deal. Like, this is what it is. There's no girls teams that are playing soccer. Or there's no girls teams that are playing baseball, but I want to play. I want to be part of the fray. And my parents always pushed me into kind of maybe doing things that not everybody else was doing. And there were no questions asked, but there was, one game where I ended up scoring the winning goal. And I think I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And there was a guy standing behind my parents. And I still can't believe to this day, my parents shared this story at age 7 or 8, that he said, I can't believe there's a girl on the team. And then I turned around and scored the winning goal. And so he then, obviously he ate his words and, apologized to my parents, not realizing it was, the parents of the only girl on the team. But I think that moment, I didn't realize at the time, but that moment sort of set my trajectory for what I would do in my career. Not necessarily in wealth, but I would sort of try to break barriers where there weren't a lot of women involved.
I love that. Can I just, that is, wow. Was it soccer? What were you playing?
Well, I was playing soccer when I scored the winning goal. And then I ended up playing, Division I volleyball in college. But, I just think it was putting me in positions that I didn't question whether or not I should be there or not. I felt, if I was good enough to be there, I was going to show them that I was good enough to be there and play wherever I needed to be. I mean, I grew up with 5 siblings. So we had a very competitive household, and my parents pushed us and always said, you guys can be whatever you want to be in your careers. And I had the fortune of growing up with a dad who really founded the institutional consulting business. He started at Merrill Lynch in the 70s and then went to Kidder Peabody. And during high school, I watched him found his own company, which was really neat, right? I mean, I saw him, kind of in the garage, making copies, doing things, like really gearing up to starting his own business. And he ultimately, when my career started in the investment advisory field, so I was actually managing money for a very large investment firm. And I, kind of grew up through that industry and learned quite a bit, because I had asked my dad, I said, if you could work anywhere, where would you work? Where would you work to get the most knowledge in the space? And he said, go to work for an asset manager. You're going to learn how to manage money, work directly with clients, and then maybe get a broader picture of what clients need. And then I recognized, I'd worked there 8 years and started there. This is actually kind of funny. I started there as an intern, and they didn't have it.
You know what, Shannon? So many of my guests start as interns in the firms that they, and like that has made such an impact on where they are in their career today. So I'm glad you brought that up, because if firms don't do internship programs, shame on them. It's so important. So anyway, you started as an intern.
And you know what, just a little tangent. I agree with you. And I think that's something that, if folks aren't doing something to implement within their organizations, and we do a very large internship program to this day, and it attracts a number of our current talent and future talent. So it gives us sort of a bench of people that we can go back to, that we've been able to kind of see how they work over a summer, period, or during the fall, whenever they're in doing the internship. But it's been an amazing program for our organization and some of our best employees. I mean, you've met Allie Hilgren, our Chief Marketing Officer. She started as an intern.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I think it just breeds some success for employees throughout the organization, which is exciting.
Yes. So that's a fascinating way in which you got into the business, and you said a lot of, I think, really important things. And I love that you opened with the story about how, even as, a young woman, you were kind of coloring outside the lines, right? You were breaking barriers. You were doing things that other maybe women weren't yet. That was a big deal probably then for you to be the only woman on a team like that. And so, and there's so many of my guests that are incredibly successful like yourself that have one major thing in common, and that's sports. They played on some kind of a team. And I think that is yet another major indicator for the success in business, right? As how successful you can be as part of a team. And then the other thing I just want to call out, because I so identify with this, is that your parents, but aren't we lucky? Because I was the same way. Our parents basically were like, you can do anything you want. I never felt held back. And what a freedom that is, because not everybody has that luxury,
For sure. And for parents to be able to share their profession. So, I mean, I came home and around the dinner table, my dad would share how he helped clients and how much passion he had around the industry. So, I mean, the lessons that I learned young, I think, propelled me to think about the business today a little bit differently, right? I mean, I don't think I would have thought about, I mean, obviously it is all client centric, but being able to help clients achieve their long-term success, I think always putting the client first is a mantra that we at Beacon Pointe, have across the organization. But I think one of the things, I obviously went to work for an asset management firm. We, did well during my career there, started as an intern, and they really didn't have a job for me. And I loved it. I loved what I was doing. I loved what I was learning. And I basically said, I'm not leaving. I was commuting 50 miles to and from work. I mean, getting paid, a very low hourly wage, but I'm like, I really want to work here. What can I do? I'll do anything, and started off as an assistant to some of the senior partners, and then grew up through the organization, running the operations of the organization. When I left there 8 years later, I was one of, maybe 2 senior managing director females in the organization. But during that time, I went back to school. I went back and got my MBA at UCLA. And the reason I chose UCLA was I thought it was the best business program for me. I only applied to one school. Thankfully, they accepted me, or otherwise I probably wouldn't have gone back to school. But I was told by a number of people, you don't need to go back. You're fine. You're on a great career trajectory. You're doing really well in this organization. But when I talked to several women, they said, you need to go back. You need to go back so that you have a well-rounded tool chest, depending upon what you're going to do in your career. And I was really lucky. I took a great entrepreneurship class, and I convinced at the time 3 other students to help me write this business plan, a business that I thought I actually may ultimately start. So they helped me write the business plan for what is Beacon Pointe today. And the professor gave me a B. And I think in that moment, I was like, everybody gets a B in business school. You kind of got to show up and you get a B. But in that moment, I thought, gosh, do I have this wrong? And, I didn't know what I didn't know. I was in my, early 30s. I reached out to my dad and said, look, I'm thinking about starting this organization. I'm going to start it in your backyard. Can you start it with me? And he said, gosh, I'm 60 years old. I, have built the company that I'm working with, and I don't know. But I power of persuasion, I convinced him to start Beacon Pointe with me. And I think that made a considerable amount of difference in the success of the organization. He came from a different background than I did in terms of working with institutional clients, and my experience was working with private wealth clients. And to be able to marry the two businesses together or, the two aspects of the business together, I think was really beneficial to the firm, because we started with a really deep foundation in investments and making sure that we had the client's portfolio set up perfectly to achieve long-term success. So, always coming at it from an institutional framework. So when alternatives are, kind of the topic of the day, we've been doing that for 22 years because that was important to the institutional client. So I think having that strong foundation has been extremely beneficial to Beacon Pointe.
Yeah. And that's such a great story. Well, I want to ask a question about when you went to get your MBA, when you went back to school and created this business plan for what is now Beacon Pointe, did you know when you went to business school that you wanted to start your own firm? Was that like kind of one of the foundational reasons you wanted to go back?
It's a really good, no one's ever asked me that question. I don't think I actually knew I was going to start my own company. What I knew at the time, that there was something wrong with the industry. And I thought, gosh, how can I fix this? Or how can we approach this a little bit differently? And by that, I mean, back in 2002, most firms either were affiliated with a broker dealer or were receiving commissions from, investment managers they were working with. So, an absolute conflict, or they had their own investment product. And, very hard for a client to fire their advisor who's also managing the assets. There's a conflict. So I thought, is there a way to not only marry institutional investments with private wealth investments, but also be completely transparent and have no conflicts or perceived conflicts of interest? So I think, my mind was working in that we have to change the industry, or at least change the paradigm of what's going on right now. And so that's how I approached it. And so I think I was primed to set up the business because I was thinking about how can we be doing things a little bit better.
And was that really the reason you decided to start your own firm, was because you saw like cracks in the foundation and were like, I want to problem solve this and think I can create something really special?
Yes. 100%. I thought there's got to be a better way to this. And not to say we were the first, because we weren't. There were plenty of people doing it the right way. But I think uniquely is, can we approach it from a little bit of a different angle with having a very strong investment base from the institutional side of the business, and then being able to parlay that to private wealth clients. And I mean, today, the majority of our business is private wealth clients, but we've been able to use that foundation and build an extremely strong investment team on top of our, very robust wealth team.
Yeah. And that must be a selling point for the wealth, for your private wealth clients, because I remember when I got my start in this industry working for pensions and investments, so that institutional side, and when moved over to the RIA and wealth management side, I found that many of those individuals wanted to know what the institutions were doing, right? And the percentage of portfolios that were allocated to things like alternatives, which was much higher at like the Yale Endowment Fund
Sure.
than you, right? So I think that must be really cool for your value proposition too.
Well, I think it gives you, and today, obviously, at north of 30 billion, we have the credibility. But I think early on, it gave us credibility where, we may not have, we hadn't earned it quite yet. So to be able to say that you work with, a endowment that's north of 100 million, and to be able to give these great list of client names that they can resonate with, I think clients, said, hey, gosh, if you can do it for these large institutions and give us the exact same thing that's tailored for a private wealth client, like, that's a benefit.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's great. So, I love hearing your story, because I actually didn't know all of that. And I think there's so many great lessons there. Another one that I really want to focus in on is, how has being one of the few women firm founders, because there's not many of you, impacted the way that you think about how you run and conduct your business now?
That's a good question, an interesting question too. Obviously early on in my career, I experienced firsthand a lot of the challenges being one of, if not the only female in the room. I am so happy things have changed, and we've seen so many women coming up in this business, and I think it's just very different than it was 20 plus years ago. which is extremely exciting for me. I think, what I saw as a young woman in the business was women not taking their seat at the table. So, and I saw it in various forms, and maybe not even sitting back and maybe not volunteering or hearing a bunch of men in a room talk about, oh, this would be the perfect person for this particular position or doing this particular thing in the organization, while a female in the room was perfectly positioned and had the experience to do that role, but wasn't raising their hand. So I think, I always said, I'm gonna take my seat at the table, whether or not I've earned it yet or not. I sat there to absorb and to contribute because I had something to contribute. So that's a lesson that I've taught those around me. Obviously there are a lot of challenges in the industry, but I think women today have a tremendous amount of opportunity in this space. But I think mentoring women in the industry has been very important to me. Speaking, in numerous, forums about women in the industry has been extremely important. I think taking from the client perspective, understanding the importance of being able to communicate differently with our end clients has been very important. Did we set out to be the largest female-led RIA in the country? No. Did we set out to have more than 50% of our leadership team female? No. But I do know that women look to where they want to be. And if they can't see themselves there, then they're not going to apply. They're not going to get promoted. And I've been asked by numerous, male founders and male-run RIAs, like, how do you get so many women in your organization? I said, you need to bring them up in the organization and lift them up from in the organization. And today, I feel like it's my duty to pull women along in this organization, as well as in the industry. So, we're doing a number of things. As we wrote a book on understanding, some, the basic financial topics geared really towards young women. And that was written by 7 or 8 women in our organization many years ago. And I'm proud to say all those women are still here in this organization. And I think it's changed the way we run the business on a day-to-day basis, meaning, being more flexible, understanding, women sometimes have different needs. The division of labor in the household is sometimes split a little bit differently.
Sometimes,
often split a little bit differently. But I think it's given us the perspective that we can serve more female clients because we have that experience personally and professionally. And as you know, the control of wealth over the next decade is going to women. So if we as organizations aren't prepared to serve that client, the face of our client will change over the next decade. And we're super excited about that because we've been working all along, the last 20 years on making sure that we could serve that marketplace. And I think we were early, for sure we were early, but it's definitely the right place to be. Today women are the breadwinners in the majority of households. It's very exciting.
Yeah, you said so many great things there, and I just had Rita Robbins on, who has started as a sales assistant at like EF Hutton back in the day, right? And she wanted to be a broker, and they were like, "I'm sorry, we already have one woman at this branch, right?" And that was the mentality back then, right? So to see. I agree with you. So much opportunity, women taking their seat at the table. She was saying she feels like so many of the women now have so much more confidence than maybe was back in the day. And while things aren't perfect, it certainly has evolved. And by seeing women like yourself that have started their own firms, that are being asked to speak on main stage, not about, how to market to women, is so important for that next generation to know that there are opportunities out there for them. So it's really great to have and feature someone like you on this podcast in order to really showcase what you're doing, your knowledge, and that others can do that as well. So
Suzanne, I was gonna say, I meet with every new employee of our organization, which is a little bit crazy, I know, but it serves a purpose, I think a really good purpose, to share the story of the firm and share kind of who we are as an organization. And I cannot tell you, I can't even count the number of women who've said, I joined this organization because there was a female CEO. So I think women want to see that. Women are pushing themselves to that. And I always tell them they can have my position too, right? Let me help you get to that place where you can take the position that you want. We don't set anybody in a certain position. It's if you want that position, we're going to help you get there. And I can think of two, we talked about Allie briefly, but Allie came to us originally. She said, gosh, I don't want to be in a field, dealing with numbers all day. That's not what I studied. That's not what I want to do. And I said, gosh, you can still be in this field and not be doing numbers all day long. Now, obviously, marketing requires you a really good understanding of the numbers, but she's grown through that. And she wouldn't have done that had we not given her the opportunity as an intern and for her to see growth of other women in the organization. And Kami Stevens, we have 3 board members. She's one of our 3 board members, came to us after raising a couple kids. And she had a very successful career. She's a former estate attorney and now, runs our estate and wealth management practice here. But she wouldn't have joined if she didn't see the flexibility in, I'm still raising kids and I may be able to work, I may have to leave at 3:00, but I'll be back online at 7:00 tonight when I get the kids down or after the kids have been fed. So I think it's just having the perspective and leading by example, right? I didn't miss my kids' events. I coached my kids in sports. And I encourage our team to do that to this day, that those are important things to do so that you can maintain somewhat equilibrium. I think there's no such thing as balance, but to have some sort of equilibrium within your home and work life.
I think that's such great advice for the women that are listening, but also the men that maybe are running firms that have women working for them on how they can really be true allies and understanding that flexibility and that how important that is for women to be successful and in this industry, not just women, but men too. So thanks for sharing those. Those are great examples and great stories of how you're really using your own platform to help others and lifting them up, as you said.
And one thing I would say too is, for, anybody that's listening, I think creating that forum for women, not at the exclusion of men, right? I mean, this isn't a women versus men thing. This is how do we serve clients better and how do we serve our team better? So having that forum, we recently at our advisor summit did a breakout with the women of the organization to see how we can better serve them as employees. And then in turn, how do we as an organization better serve clients? And that's not, women work with male advisors, men work with female advisors. It's not that. It's how do we as an organization do better?
Yeah. There's such an interconnectivity of those things, right? Being able to use your team members almost as like mini focus groups to help make sure that your firm is prepared for the future. And that ultimately, remember, they're also represent potential investors. So a lot of their viewpoints and feelings are the same things that your clients are going to be having. So I think that interconnectivity between that is probably helping you also serve your current and future clients. And speaking of current and future clients, this podcast is all about what firms need to do to be successful now and in the future. So what are some of the things that you're doing at your firm to better serve current and future clients? And what is like a little bit of your growth strategy? I know obviously you have inorganic growth as part of that, but what are you doing from an organic growth perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we have, over 50 offices across the country. It's not a cookie cutter approach to organic growth. So we may have some offices that are focused on, different segments or, maybe doctors or maybe women in transition or maybe entrepreneurs. So it's not a we don't have an approach across the organization, but we do have very strong organic growth. And I think that's attributable to, the way that we approach the marketplace, being geographically dense in certain areas has been very helpful, right? I think those firms that have the most recognition within a particular market tend to get the most referrals within a particular market. I think, brand recognition, being out there in the community, we've been really deliberate on our, making sure that we're out there on our social media channels. Our marketing team does a fabulous job. I've never once posted anything on LinkedIn. Our marketing team does a really great job of getting that communication out there for our senior team as well as our advisors. We're curating a lot of that content internally. Actually, all of our content's curated internally, but we're making sure it's getting out to all the markets that we currently serve, so that we are thought of as thought leaders within the industry. And then we try to curate content that's important to local markets or important to existing clients, and whether it's clients in transition, or making sure that we're hitting clients during certain decades of their life in terms of their planning and what's important to them, or whether it's estate planning and what are the important topics around estate planning. We're out there making sure that that information's in the market, and then we're doing some things that maybe are a little bit different, that I know some of our friends in the industry are also doing. But AI, how do we target certain clients within that are our target clients within certain markets? How do we make sure that we're recognized when someone's doing a search within a local market, that we're the firm that comes up? So we're doing a lot of work and spending a lot of money around those particular areas to make sure that we're foremost on people's minds if they're looking for a wealth advisor.
It's so funny that you just said that, because when you were talking about, generating content and being very specific in how you're curating your content, I was going to ask you if you are using any tools that are AI driven that are helping with that. And then you also then brought up basically using AI for helping you with prospects and refining that prospect strategy. So what are you using from, not that I need to know all the products, but I mean, is that an area that you guys are tapping into at this point?
We are keenly focused in that particular area. And I went out to our leadership team, several months ago, and we have a plan for each of our organizations within the organization as to how we're going to do better as an organization with respect to AI, as well as, bot technology. So what can we be putting in place that's, a lot of the repetitive technology or repetitive tasks that we're doing in the organization can be alleviated. Our HR team came back and said, "God, you can tell through some of this technology," and we have not implemented this yet, but I'm very intrigued by what AI is going to do for our organization, from a cybersecurity to compliance. I think there's a lot to do from HR. But our HR department came back and said, there's tools we can deploy that will help us learn if an employee is not very engaged. Like that we can know within 6 months of somebody potentially resigning that they're looking for something else, which I think is helpful as an organization. We do a lot of stuff around that as well, because I think understanding your team's engagement is very important for the culture of the organization. We do a Gallup study every year and really kind of dive deep into how we're doing as an organization, how engaged our team is, and what we can be putting around our team. But I think with respect to AI and bots, there's so much to be done there, and I think we're just starting to scratch the surface. I mean, I look at it even from a investment research standpoint. There's a lot we can be doing there, a lot of repetitive tasks. Our general counsel, who reviews a plethora of documents all the time. I think there's just better and easier ways to implement some of this AI technology. I mean, I'm sure you've used ChatGPT. It's unbelievable.
It really is. And
I could have probably done this whole podcast using ChatGPT. Look at a question.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I do think that it's funny, because I was just talking to somebody about ChatGPT, and it's really like, to me, where the savings is when you're using something like that and helping with writing and creation of emails or a column, is you put in your thoughts, and then ChatGPT organizes it, and then you can edit from there. So it's almost like, it's not like completely one-stop shop, but it saves hours of time. And in order for you to do other things, right? Which is, that automating a lot of the manual tasks, like you were discussing, reading documents, summarizing those documents. I mean, there's so much going on in that area. And I think I'm glad to hear that you guys are focusing in and learning. I think the most successful firms are going to really try and learn as much as they can about AI and how it can be helpful, all while keeping in the back of their heads the compliance and regulatory constraints that do come with it. But I think it's just fascinating. It sounds like you guys are using it for a lot of really cool things. And
Yeah,
then
and I'm super excited to see where it takes us. And I think, we're just starting to scratch the surface. But it is an exciting evolution for the business.
so in addition to AI, what's one other, because everybody's talking about it, what's one other key trend that you are seeing that you think will really have a great impact on our industry? Because I think we can both agree AI is one of those trends. What
Yeah,
would be a second?
I would say there's a few things, and these aren't revolutionary. I mean, we're all seeing it, but I think you're going to continue to see consolidation in the space, right? I mean, as we, and I think the larger firms, I think you need to have scale to succeed right now, because it's just access. It's access to talent. It's access to technology and tools. I mean, I have these conversations about AI with some smaller RIAs, and it's hard. It's hard to focus. It's hard to focus on some of these big key learnings. We were fortunate as an organization that when we set up the organization, we said we're going to have folks running the business, managing the business, thinking about strategy, thinking about all the things about the business, and not be working in the business on a day-to-day basis. So really kind of separation of church and state, so that we can really focus on these big key trends in the industry. I think we're not seeing fee compression. I know this is a big, the industry says, oh, we're seeing fee compression, or we're going to have fee compression. I think folks are now saying that we're not really having fee compression. We might have margin compression, right? Because I think clients are saying we want more. And I think we're going to start to see, more concierge style services coming down market to clients. So I think that is a big trend in the industry. The other thing that I think is really big for larger firms, and I think we're all getting much better about it, is data, right? We have so much great information. It's really digging into that information and getting a central repository for that information. Because historically, most of us have had 5 different systems kind of combining into one, but having that big data lake to make sure that we're being able to pull and gather the right information for clients is very important. And I think in the future, that'll be extremely helpful as we look to see the decisions clients are making. And hopefully we'll be working with some of our custodial partners. And it was interesting, you had mentioned Tiffin before. You were speaking with him. And I think some of the things that they're doing could really lift the industry in terms of understanding the underlying data that we have.
Yeah, oh God, those are
That's like 5 things. Sorry.
Yeah, no, those are seriously, like, those are so fantastic, and that they tie together, because with the data part, I think more and more firms are starting to recognize the importance of data and the importance of clean data.
Mm-hmm.
In order for, and I'm like working on an AI project right now, which is why I feel like I've got AI on the brain. But what I'm learning is, in order for a lot of the AI tools to operate at their most optimal level, you need to have clean data that like is part of that AI, is part of the AI universe. And
Well,
so that is, I think they all kind of go together, and those are really, really interesting trends. And I love that you did the differentiation between fee compression and margin compression. I couldn't agree more. More clients are demanding more from their advisors, and technology is allowing advisors to scale some of those offerings, right? But to your point, unless you have scale in your firm, it's hard to scale anything, right?
and I think, I just think over the years, of growing Beacon Point, we've recognized the importance of having folks in leadership positions that have a key focus. So it's really hard to focus on 10 different things or 20 different things in an organization. So having industry experts in key functions of the organization, I think, really helps propel an organization forward.
Well, I could talk to you for hours, but we are at our last question. I always ask the same one of all my guests, with the title and theme of the podcast: focused on the future, keys to building a sustainable, profitable, and impactful business in mind. What, Shannon, is your last line? What key takeaway do you want to leave with our audience?
I think the key would be embracing technology while prioritizing the client, and committing to innovative practices within your organization.
I love that. And it's you, again, you kind of touched on a lot of the things that we talked about today, but just technology is just at the center of almost every single thing, along with, serving clients, right? So that's a fantastic last line. Thank you so much for being my guest today and for sharing your thoughts on leading and growing a successful business. I loved hearing how you started it, some of the top trends affecting the financial advice profession, and for being such a great role model for so many women in our industry. It's really needed and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm Suzanne Siracuse. Thanks for listening, and I hope this episode leaves you feeling even more excited to be focused on the future.